Hey everyone, I'm going to show you how to carve a pumpkin today, my way. And hopefully this will give you some extra tips and tricks to make your pumpkin carving successful this year. So first you want to get your space set up. It's best to work outside because obviously we're going to make a little bit of a mess here. It's good to have some containers. Now if you want to save your pumpkin seeds, have a container that you can put just the seeds in, and then you can bake those in the oven. I can explain more about that later. You also want a container for all of the inside goop, because that's going to need to be thrown away in the trash unless you're planning on baking a pie. And in that case, you might want a baking pumpkin. Some other things you're going to want are, I think a measuring scoop is really great for pulling out the insides, because you can put your thumb right here and scrape against the edges. This can work really well. I'll show you how I use that later. And then you are not going to want to use a knife, but you are going to want a carving saw. They sell these, especially during the fall, at craft stores and grocery stores. These are serrated and they're great because they're not going to cut you so easily. They're not pointy at the end, so it's great for actually carving away at the pumpkin. They also sell kits that have all different kinds of tools in them, ranging from these kind of gouges and more serrated carving knives. But again, I do not recommend using a kitchen knife, a sharp knife that you'd use to cut vegetables with, for carving a pumpkin. That can be really dangerous. One more thing that I'm going to recommend you have is actually a regular push pin. This I'm going to use to help put my stencil design onto my pumpkin. All right, so let's get started with that now. So I've drawn out my design. As you can see, I'm doing a Minnie Mouse, and I have already made sure that the size is going to be good for my pumpkin. Now you'll notice I cut the edges of the stencil here. I just went around and cut all of the edges because when I tape this onto my pumpkin, I want to be able to get it to go around this round form by overlapping some of the pieces of the paper here. This is going to allow my paper to really be flush to the edge of this pumpkin. Now also, when deciding what side to put your stencil on, you got to remember pumpkins grow outside on the ground. They actually grow laying down. So they're going to have a good side and a bad side. One side might be a little bit flat, one side might be a little bit dirty or, just like kind of ugly. So find the most attractive smooth side that you want to use for the front of your pumpkin carving. So I'm going to put my tape all the way around my pumpkin. And again, as I go, I'm going to let the papers overlap each other so I can get this down as smooth as possible. I'm putting my stencil on before I carve my pumpkin at all, before I even get into the top of it, because I know that it's going to get slimy and kind of messy as I clean it out on the inside. So I'm going to take care of getting the actual design pressed into the pumpkin first. Okay, so now I'm just taking a regular push pin that you'd use for a cork board, and I'm going to go all the way around every edge that I have drawn my black lines for. So if I am working on an area like this here, this top of the bow, I'm going to make my dotted line along the top edge and along the bottom edge so that I remember how thick I want this line to be. Hopefully when you create a stencil for a pumpkin, you can already plan for places for the pumpkin to remain intact. Like, you can't cut too much out or else it's all going to fall out and you're going to have nothing to stabilize it. So you do have to think about that when planning out your stencil. Of course, you can buy stencils. They come in books and things, but it's great to be able to make your own unique designs too. Also notice this is a fruit, okay? Again, it's gonna be wet inside, so your design, if you're using any kind of washable marker, it's gonna start smearing all over when you do this. You wanna use a Sharpie if you're going to be trying to darken in any lines, or else if not, just pencil would be better than any kind of water-soluble material. I want to point out that the reason we're doing this is to transfer the design of the stencil onto the pumpkin and allow you to then have this dotted line to trace with your carving knife later. So you're going to be cutting on these lines. This is a really great way to begin many kinds of sculptures and even two-dimensional artwork. Actually, Michelangelo used a very similar method to this to transfer his drawings for his plans for the Sistine Chapel ceiling. Okay, now I have finished tracing my dotted line and I'm ready to start cleaning out my pumpkin. This is a really important part of your pumpkin carving. So I just took a red pen and I made a circular line around the stem showing where I'm going to cut. Now you definitely need your hole to be large enough for your whole hand to get inside because you're going to be cleaning out this entire pumpkin with your hands. Also, you're going to want to make a notch in the back behind the stem, okay, in the back side. This is going to help you be able to place the lid back on. When you cut, you want to cut at a 45-degree angle, so not straight down. You want to cut at an angle, and this is going to help the lid stay put and not fall through into the pumpkin. If you cut straight through and you drop your lid in, it's going to just go straight down to the bottom. All right, now we're going to get a little messy now, so you want to roll up your sleeves, and again, 45-degree angle, and then saw back and forth. Okay, I'm going to do the notch right away. And again, 45-degree angle, so diagonal, not straight up and down. Now I've gone all the way around. Now sometimes at first, when you go to remove it, it's going to be a little stuck. Don't pull too hard on the stem or you could break the stem off. So be gentle, okay, because there's all this stuff inside. You may need to use your knife and loosen that up more before it'll come out. There we go. Okay, once you have your lid off, take your container, wherever you're putting all your goop and insides, and you're just going to want to cut some of that off. Okay, just make sure you leave about an inch. You want an inch of pumpkin, but just get all that extra stuff off. Okay, now to start cleaning out the insides, you want to get the inside as clean as you get the lid here, okay? Here's where your measuring cup can be so awesome. Just get it in there, use your fingers here, and just start pulling some out. Look how you can really grip with it, okay? Because you can get your thumb inside there. And then if you want to start separating or have a family member help separate your seeds, you can do that into another container. Just scrape the sides. And this is going to take you a little bit of time, but it'll be worth it in the end.
Don't be afraid to get your hands dirty.
So at this point, we're almost finished cleaning out the pumpkin. All we have to do is just scrape the sides a little bit more. If you have one of these kind of spoons that has a serrated edge, Those are great, and they come in some pumpkin carving kits. Sometimes they're just plastic ones. That still could be good. But if you don't have any of these, again, your good old-fashioned measuring cup can scrape as well. Just really scrape the sides to get it as clean as possible. Okay, now we're gonna actually start carving. The inside is clean. We take our tape off here. Now double check, of course, that you did poke all around your stencil first, and then you can lift this all off and you should see a dotted line. Now you can be more careful about it if you're unsure and just kind of peel it back slowly, but I'm just gonna tear mine off because I double checked. I know I went over all of my lines. So this should look like a really nice pattern for you now. Now keep in mind, you know, if you choose to do some kind of painting or anything else to your pumpkin other than carving, this method works great for that too, because by poking these small holes with a push pin, you're not making deep indentations. You could still really do anything on top of this. But for carving, since that's what I'm gonna do, I'm now gonna take my carving saw, okay? And I'll show you with a couple different ones because, you know, you may have one of these from maybe the grocery store or from the craft store. These are great. This is really just like these ones that I have, but smaller, okay? And you wanna use what's good and available for you. So I'm gonna start carving in the center. You want to make sure that as you carve, it doesn't get too weak. So by working center out, you're not going to have the center be weak when you work on it. Okay, so center first, and I'm just gonna follow along my line, sawing back and forth. Now I'm having my blade go straight in. I'm not going in at an angle now. For some kinds of designs, of course, you could choose to have effects where you go in at a 45-degree angle so that you see more of the thickness of the pumpkin. I'm just going straight in. Okay, and you can see now that piece comes out. Okay, now if you look in and you realize that maybe you are at a bit of an angle after all and you want to remove more, then go around and take off a little bit more of that fruit inside. Okay, again, working from the middle out, so important. If you do the outside edge first and then try to work in the middle, you could end up having the whole inside of your pumpkin collapse on you. So start at the inside and work your way out. I would say make sure you always leave at minimum 2 centimeters of pumpkin between every area. You wouldn't want to try to leave any less than that, or I could see things collapsing on you there too. Up and around, trying to go right along my lines. Now, this is a subtractive sculpture. We're carving areas away. But you might want to keep some pieces that come out to add them on. Depending on what you are trying to create, maybe you'd want some additive components as well. So I've seen some really great pumpkins carved before where ears or horns or teeth are actually added by the artist taking the pieces of pumpkin that were removed subtractively and added on using things like toothpicks or wire. If these little details were done after these big areas were removed, it would be very challenging to not have pieces just break right off. I like to remove the largest areas last. This is going to be a pretty large area to take out here, so I'm going to go up first, do the top of the bow. Now, since I'm going to remove all of this, I'm a little worried about this part here breaking, so I'm just going to cut in right here so that I can more carefully pull this piece out, because I knew this was getting really thin here. So keep that in mind. Just because this is all connected and all going to be removed, it doesn't have to all come out at once. All right, so I have all of my pieces removed now. Now all I need to do is just clean this up. And then something to keep in mind, when you do put a candle in it, once you start burning a candle inside your pumpkin, you're basically cooking the pumpkin. So it's going to start to go bad quicker. So if you want your pumpkin to last longer while lit, don't use a real candle, use one of those fake candles that just work on electricity, and you can keep your pumpkin lit for much longer. Now at this point, I am done carving. You can really see the mini in the pumpkin, but to clean it up a little bit, I'm just gonna take, this is just a wet paper towel, I'm just gonna gently wipe it off on the outside and also on the inside. It takes some time to really try to get off all the little pieces. And you might have to work with it a bit, especially on the inside, to get it to look as clean as you can. Just be careful, there might be some delicate areas, like on mine right here. This is very delicate. You don't want to, pop any of your pieces off. Just get your fingers in there, as clean as can be. There is so much that can be learned from carving a pumpkin. It's a really great introduction to subtractive sculpture. I really hope all of you watching will get out there and try carving a pumpkin yourself this fall or any time during the year. Enjoy the process and enjoy the results.